Okay, here is Cousin Andrew. And Cousin Andrew is a big, chunky 16.1 and a half hand thoroughbred gelding by Into Mischief. He's a 9-year-old. He actually just turned 9. His birthday was on April 16th, so 2 days ago he turned 9. And this kid comes from a trainer at Parks, and he has 42 career starts. He made $200,000 on the track. He actually, as a yearling, he sold for 270K, and then he went on again to sell for another 75K. So he has sold for some pretty good money in his youth. And 42 career starts is a pretty impressive career. He actually hasn't run in almost a year. His last race was on May 5th, 2025, but he has published works from this past fall. And he was in training up until about 2 weeks ago when Billy went and picked him up from park. So he has actively still been living racehorse life, even though he hasn't actually run a race in nearly a year now. So he's been here for a couple of weeks, and it was just a sort of a perfect storm of timing that I finally got to have my first ride on him today. So this is his first post-track ride that you're watching. When it was decided that he was finished being a racehorse, his connections pulled off his shoes, which is not an uncommon thing. And so when he arrived to me, he was barefoot. And it was clear that in order for him to be comfortable working, he would need some front shoes on. But unfortunately, my farrier was away like the week that he arrived, and then farrier came back but got sick, and then what happened? He finally came out a couple days ago, which was great. He got his shoes on, feet look fantastic, and then something happened. Oh, yeah, I thought I was gonna ride him, but then forgot the dentist was coming, and then he needed his teeth done, so then I got some dorm to get his teeth. Anyway, it just goes on and on. It's absolutely ridiculous how hard it can be sometimes just to make time to ride a horse, and it's like this is all I do every day. But nonetheless, finally, 2 weeks into his stay here, I finally got to sit on him today. And he was so excellent. I mean, what I could tell about this horse before I got to ride him is that obviously he's built really uphill and his neck makes a beautiful shape. So, as long as he's been nicely and somewhat correctly ridden in his mouth, roundness should be really easy for him. And sure enough, I mean, he figured out the contact super fast. He's in the Hermspringer Duo loose ring here, and I liked that bit on him. I tend to play around with bits, so I'm sure I'll use a couple different variations of similar bits, but sort of the soft rubber straight bar is definitely the right path for him at the moment. And once he figured out the softness, which took, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, he just had it. He was like, okay, this makes sense. This feels good. This is a nice place to live. And he just was so happy to sit there in that contact, which was so nice, made my job so easy. A very typical racehorse in the sense that he finds the left bend comes a little bit more easily than the right bend here. So you're seeing as he goes to the right down that long side we just went down, you're a little bit of leaning on the right shoulder. Uh, Nothing out of the total ordinary realm of horse right off the track though. And actually, for a 9-year-old, he's been a racehorse for so long. He's run so many races. Actually, he was really easy, to be honest. And here, actually, you'll notice, and I need to stop saying actually, that he's starting to find the stretch a little bit, which is just so impressive. So it's a little bit awkward with these guys sometimes when they start learning the stretch because, of course, then I let my reins out so that they can stretch, but then naturally they want to come back up for a second. They bobble it, and then my reins are long. So it looks a little messy, but it's all just sort of part of the process. And I'm happy to have some messy moments in order for them to figure out where we want them to go. Now, this horse's legs are remarkably clean. I mean, they look fantastic. There's all his joints are cold and tight. Tendons look fantastic. I don't even think he has so much of a splint on either one of his front legs. So he really held up incredibly well to racing. And I always just find that, the older war horses like that, if they could run that many times for that long, sustain that sort of intense career, come out of it sound and ready to go, they're pretty much made of steel. So as I always do, I annoyed him with some poles. Well, actually, I didn't really annoy him with it. He was happy to do it. He was very good about walking over all his poles. This is just what we were doing when we were taking our walk break. It's a very cute little look on his face as we do this. So, sort of as you would expect with the round way that he carries himself in the trot, very similar way of going in the canter. Actually, the canter is really nice. It's very balanced, soft, uphill. He makes just a beautiful shape in the bridle. For whatever reason, when we first started cantering, I was in half seat. Sometimes it's just sort of a feel, knowing when you think they would appreciate lightening the seat a little bit. But actually, in a moment here, I'm going to sit down because he's not, I wouldn't say that he's like contact neutral here. We're having a conversation, we're engaged. He's certainly not upset about the contact, but after all the trot work we just did, I know that he can be a lot rounder and deeper in the contact. So in a moment here, I'm going to sit down and really sort of work it a little bit, and he just comes through absolutely beautifully to the left. I think this is so lovely. Now, I couldn't get him quite this round to the right because to the right, he needs to sort of loosen up that inside rib cage a little bit and find some more flexion to the right before I can really sit and kick him up to the contact the way that I can here to the left. But I mean, this is his first post-track ride, and I just thought it was so impressive, and it really felt lovely when I had him here. These are some really nice steps right here. Just super, super round, sitting really nicely behind. Feels like a bit of a Cadillac. It's also just so impressive to me. This is a 9-year-old warhorse who ran 42 times. He's having his first post-track ride, and just the incredible way that he could just so easily change the shape of what he's being asked to do from racehorse to going around more round and soft like a sport horse is just so impressive. So here we are to the right. Obviously you can see here just a little bit crooked. Haunches are a little bit to the inside, leaning on the right shoulder. He just needs to really spend some time working that right canter. But, in all honesty, this will get fixed as the walk and the trot become stronger. And you don't want to drill these things, right? You wouldn't want to just have a ride where for 20 minutes you're just drilling this right canter. That is not what he needs right now. He just needs a couple minutes, a ride where you're sort of asking the questions. Hopefully he meets you there. Most of the time, he won't always answer the question correctly, and that's just fine. You just have to have the conversation. And then as long as you just keep the question fair and consistent, eventually, a nice horse like this that's obviously such a trier and wants to engage with you in the conversation, he will figure it out, and it will not even take very long. Here he is on cross sides. He's wonderful to work with on the ground. Super, super friendly. I know his trainer, Brenda, absolutely spoiled him to death with peppermints. So he loves his handouts and his treats. He's definitely addicted to sugar. But he is a good boy on the ground. Stands really nicely on cross ties, loads well, travels well, good for tacking and grooming and bathing and clipping and all the things. And he got clipped a couple of days ago, but it was a really warm day last week. I think it was like 90 degrees. And I hate clipping when it's that warm. He started sweating, and then the fan was on, and then, the fan is blowing all the hair all over you. It's just absolutely disgusting and annoying. So I did a pretty terrible clip. There's just a whole bunch of spots I had to touch up. So today, I'm just touching up those spots before we take him out to do his confo pictures. Obviously, he's not had any drugs here. No dorm for clipping is needed. He's a very good boy about it. I also should mention that he's not a horse that you need to lunge or anything before you get on. And honestly, he feels just like a very sort of reliable type of horse with a great brain.